All right, 43.2. All right, we read about the program for free college education for undocumented aliens or immigrants. And it's not, it doesn't go that far. It is actual a program specifically for undocumented. It's $25.2 million in loans, $8.4 million a year for 3 years for undocumented in the UC system. If tuition's 40 grand a year, which is conservative, that would cover about 210 students a year, and it's a loan. It's not free money. It has to be paid back. And there's another 3.4 million in fellowships to buy textbooks and stuff like that. So, you know, it doesn't cover that. It doesn't cover every illegal, and it covers a few hundred people.
Well, I never said every single illegal got to go to college. That was not my implication.
No, but I mean, the implication was that if you were undocumented and you made it into the UC system,
you would get help by the government, and you do.
Yeah, if you're one of the lucky 210.
Well, look, it's 25 million people. We don't have, in California, there's not enough taxes to put every single of the 3 million illegals through college. I never said that.
Yeah, but that was kind of the implication.
Oh, well, okay. It is not my position that the Democrats are going to put all 3 million illegals in California into college.
Okay.
My point is that the Democrats have allocated $25 million to specifically help people that have admitted to being illegal aliens.
Yes.
Which is
though in the form of loans, not in the form of
I don't care what it is. What they should loan them a bus ticket and an escort out of the country.
All right. So on to the next thing.
No, wait a minute.
No, come on.
It's wrong. It's wrong.
Well, obviously you believe it's wrong.
Well, don't you believe it's wrong?
I believe it's a token effort. It's like I'm not that bugged by it. It's $25 million in loans.
Well, I wish that someone would give me $25 million in loans.
Can you come up with 3 other programs you think where that money could go? Or 2 programs or 1 program that you think?
I think they should give it to realist artists that are having a tough time making it when they are people of obvious genius. That's who should get all the money. Now we can go, but it's wrong. People that are illegal should be bussed out. They shouldn't be given incentives to stay in this country. I don't know what the matter is. What's the matter with you? There are people in this country besides me that really deserve it. American citizens that could use that money. You could take that $25 million and you could stick it into Compton and maybe build a hospital.
Not for $25 million.
Rick, don't, come on. You know what I'm getting at, and you know it's wrong. Don't argue about the math. It's wrong, isn't it, Rick? Shouldn't that money go to American citizens? Don't you care more about Americans than people from other countries?
I agree it's a little goofy, but I would also say it's a pittance.
It's not a pittance. That's $25 million. California
is not $25 million in free money. It's a $25 million loan.
I can't get a loan. Loans are hard to get these days. It's $25 million along with all the other things we're spending money on is a lot of money, Rick. It may not seem like much to you, but they shouldn't be giving them anything.
It's about 70 cents for every citizen of California.
I don't want every citizen in California to give 70 cents to illegals to get free college.
Not giving them, loaning them 70 cents.
Okay.
All right. So anyway, it's a little goofy, but it's not the end of the world.
It's not the end of the world. It's just one more shitty thing that you're willing to do to help illegal aliens so they'll vote for Democrats.
They can't vote. Let's not have that argument. Anyway, let's move on.
I have more. Another wonderful thing the Democrats did is there's two wonderful things they did, and they're related. The first is the Democrats hate guns, but they also love voters. So they've changed the law so that if you use a gun in a crime, there's no longer an additional 10-year mandated penalty. In California, it used to be that if you used a gun in a crime, you got an extra 10 years for whatever they gave you. Now, the Democrats quietly got rid of that because I guess criminals must be their constituents. I don't know. They just thought it would be nice to be softer on criminals. Now, so that means they're going to take away guns from law-abiding citizens, but if you're a criminal and you commit a crime, you no longer pay an extra penalty. Why? But
I don't know why. Why? I don't know why.
I know you don't know why. It's a rhetorical question. But here's another point. I know why. It's because they're pandering to their constituents who are criminals. But there's more.
No, that's just ridiculous, but okay.
Every study shows that people in prison vote Democrat 90%. It's overwhelming.
People in prison don't
Republicans in prison are extremely rare. Now, there's one more point. It turns out that the Department of Education that was begun by a Democrat decided under the Obama administration that too many young people were going to jail or being reported to the police. So what they did was they sent a mandate down from Washington to all the schools in the United States that when a young person commits a crime that could be handled by the police, the school's supposed to try to handle it on their own and not report it to the police. And it turns out that all across the country, troublemakers are staying out of the penal system because the teachers are being written up and being coerced to not report their crimes to the police. And the result is a guy like this latest shooter, Nicholas Cruz, would have been picked up. He would have been in the system and he would have had a record and he would not have been permitted to have a gun. But because of Democrats soft on crime, soft on discipline, that's what happened. He would have been in the system because there were 49 complaints about him and the high school refused to report him to the cops.
Well, he was reported to the FBI too, and the cops, he was reported directly to the cops dozens of times. It wasn't just the failure of him to be reported to the cops due to behavior in school. His neighbors reported him dozens of times. They called the FBI. Yeah. So it's not just what the schools did or didn't do. Now, I know a little about this. So after the Columbine massacre, there was many schools across tens of thousands of schools across the country started having school safety officers. And this led to a huge uptick, a huge increase in the number of, it didn't lead to, a decrease in mass shootings. It led to a huge increase in the numbers of students who ran afoul of the school safety officers and were arrested. And I guess in the face of this huge increase of kids getting arrested for not always major disciplinary problems, but disciplinary problems that were formerly taken care of within the schools, were now being treated as police matters due to an influx of school safety officers. I'm guessing the Obama administration said, hey, let's see if we can back off of this new deal that gets, tens and hundreds of thousands of kids arrested where they weren't being arrested before.
All right. Well, let me put it to you this way. Number one, the Department of Education is an evil system developed by the Democrats so that Washington could stick their nose in the education of kids all around the country that should be educated by their states. And we've gone from in the top 5 of education in the world to number 17 since we started the Department of Education.
What year was it started?
Under Carter in the late 70s. That's the first thing. The second thing is this.
And
The
during
second thi-
no,
the second thing is
under
this.
since
If-
19 in the 40 years, 40
Yes.
since 1977.
Yes.
What percent of those years did we have a Republican-controlled Congress?
Oh, they have tried to get rid of the Department of Education, Rick, but they face a massive phalanx of brainwashed, corrupt Democrats that fight them to the death. And so they just figure this is too hard. And so they've let
So
this
adjusted
thing, they
for-
have let this thing go on, and now we're getting school shootings. You say it's because, well, those poor kids were unfairly being reported, and I'm saying we're getting school shootings because the teachers are afraid to discipline the kids. Because now one of the number one complaints of teachers today is that they're not able to discipline their kids because the principals are afraid of the Department of Education, and they're trying to bring the numbers of arrests down of kids, regardless of the consequences.
Yeah, they're trying to bring the number of arrests down, but they're not trying to reduce the number of disciplinary actions.
Yeah, what's happened is this. The number of arrests in particularly that particular high school that Cruz was in went from 1,000 down to 300. But it didn't
Per
mean that-
year?
Yeah, it didn't. Well, I don't know what the number of years was, but during the testing period that they were comparing one period to another, I think in the whole district or the whole area, like all the high schools, it was several. It wasn't one.
Okay,
high school.
because that
But-
high
but-
school, Marjorie Stoneman High School,
Yeah.
is supposed to be a good high school with nice kids. And it would be crazy that a good high school with nice kids has 300 arrests
Well,
in
no,
the
I'm
course
not-
of
no,
a
I'm
year or
not-
whatever.
I'm not saying that. I'm
I
saying
mean, that's a
that-
lot of.
I'm not saying that.
Okay.
I'm saying in the whole district, I think like 20 high schools or whatever. The point is that they brought the numbers down, but the students are out of control.
Not at that-
because of bleeding heart liberals like yourself that are afraid to discipline the kids, and teachers
Marjorie Stoneman High-
teachers are living in fear of their
Marjorie
students.
Stoneman High School is not not a concrete jungle school with
I'm
underpants
not
stuck to the
talking
wall.
about that particular school.
Yeah, but you were. You said 300, and then you said for
No,
the whole
I didn't-
district.
I
but,
didn't say
But
it
it's
was
an
just that
affluent
school.
But it's an affluent district.
Rick, it's all over the country. It's every single high school, every single junior high. The mandate came down from the Democrat Department of Education to stop reporting kids to the police because we want to be nice to kids. And now we have a breakdown of discipline, and it's the Democrats' fault. And if they commit a crime using a gun in California, they no longer serve additional penalty years in prison. Thank you, Democrats.
Yeah, I'll read up on that. But on the other thing, there was a huge uptick because you had Officer Dudley on duty in the school who was arresting kids for, brawling in the cafeteria. A football player pushes a nerd, and the nerd throws his cafeteria tray at the football player. Boom, they both get arrested.
And you believe this?
Yes,
Okay.
that minor infractions were being criminalized.
Okay, and I'm telling you that it's unquestioned.
Because I read it in a magazine.
Okay. And I'm telling you that the teachers are afraid to report their kids now. So we let one of our millions of viewers decide what the truth is.
Okay,
Let it go on record that I'm saying that the teachers are afraid to discipline the students. What's more likely?
Well,
Given the
I know
world we
teachers.
live in today.
I know teachers, and teachers are reluctant to discipline students, maybe it's partly because of that, and maybe partly because of asshole parents. Parents of our generation.
No, they get called into the office by the principal now if they report the students too often. That's a new thing that was instituted by the Democrats. Don't report the kids as much. And
to
so
the cops, not to the administrators.
I think even to the administrators.
Nah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because
no, but let's
because
talk
they
about
don't-
let's.
because it doesn't look good. They get reported now. The teachers get reported now for being too hard disciplining. Go move down.
All right.
For disciplining the kids too much.
Yeah, that's not exactly it. And I know teachers, and I know there's been a major cultural change between our parents and the parents of today's school children. Not every parent, of course, but in our generation, if we got in trouble at school, we'd be in trouble at home. If we got sent home with a note and we didn't tear the note up, then our parents would be pissed at us and we'd likely get punished.
My father would hit me with the metal end of the buckle of the belt.
Right in your nutsack?
Sometimes it was right across the face.
No.
And
wait,
and
your dad?
My father would take turns beating me with his father, helping him when he got tired beating me. That's how it was. If you said one word that a teacher didn't like.
Well, not exactly that, but closer to that then than now, when you send a note home that some precious little ADHD kid is disrupting the class, and then the parents either don't respond or they say, "No, my kid's fine. There's nothing wrong with my kid." Asshole parents are part of the problem.
The only thing that bothered me is that my father and my grandfather they beat me while I was naked. I didn't like that part. They made me take my clothes off so they could get more skin on the beating. The welts were that thick. The blood was everywhere.
Lance's dad was a very sophisticated guy. He was tonight's Oscar night. Lance's dad actually won an Oscar for Best Picture, Best Screenplay of 1956?
64.
1964.
Or 60.
No.
It might have been 63. Sometimes
Anyway,
I get confused.
yeah.
It was right after... Oh, no, I'm sorry. 64 was the Pink Panther. 60 was Pillow Talk. And 61 was Ben-Hur. Okay,
all right. So anyway, Lance's dad, a very sophisticated guy, at home in a tux, not one to beat him bloody.
That part of the story was somewhat exaggerated.
Okay. All right, let's move on to some of my junk. One thing that's been popping up more and more in the Trump administration is crazy amateurism among appointees. With the best one possibly being the head of the EPA, Scott Pruitt. Scott Pruitt is an ex-governor of some, farm belty state. The EPA is supposed to protect our environment. Scott Pruitt belongs to a church that endorses the belief that it's a sin not to maximize the use of natural resources, including oil and coal. When Scott Pruitt was governor, he actually closed down the EPA in the state branch of the state he was governor of. Also, Scott Pruitt, the head of perhaps the most science-oriented agency among the federal agencies, doesn't believe in evolution. So he doesn't believe that it's bad to burn coal. And this is also the guy who flies first class on planes, because if he flies coach, people yell at him for fucking up the environment. Or he's afraid, somebody did yell at him, and he was afraid of getting yelled at further, so he asked to be seated in first class from now on. So I think now he's had to go back to coach. So I will ask you, Lance, what do you think of turpentine?
I have no opinion. Give me the trap that you're setting for me.
Well, it's a shitty trap because I'm a shitty trapper. But turpentine used to be used as paint thinner universally. It smells good. It's made out of pine trees, and it cleans up paint when your brushes are dirty or if you need to thin paint out. And so people used turpentine for hundreds of years until it was found that turpentine is what? Carcinogenic? Is killy. It will. Now Lance has to use a paint thinner that is less likely to kill you. Do you like that kind of stuff?
Well, you're asking the wrong guy because I don't use turpentine. Because
I don't think you can. Can you even buy it anymore?
I don't know because I stopped using it 20 years ago because the medium I use is primarily oil, and turpentine is best used to cut through varnishes and thick unctuous mediums. And my medium is very fluid and easy to cut through, so I just use paint thinner, which is cheap and it's not as strong as turpentine. So this thing doesn't work with me.
Okay, but I mean, it's crazy that a guy who believes that whatever we do with the natural world and who's actually against the EPA is in charge of the EPA.
Wrong. Are you ready for my response?
Sure, let's go.
Okay. First of all, I have always thought, now we can look this up because I'm not sure the exact number, but the federal government and the government of the United States, federal and state, owns, I believe, 20% of the land in this country, doesn't it? It's, in other words, some vast amount of territory, something the size of maybe Spain and France.
Okay.
Is owned by the government. And a lot of reasonable people, Republicans, have begun to say, look, why are vast swaths of U.S. territory owned by the government and lay completely unproductive? So, and I believe it's as high as 20%, maybe even higher, maybe 25%. Of the territory of the U.S. And one of the reasons is, of course, crazy bureaucratic laws. And one of the things...
Are you talking mostly in the form of national parks and such?
Not just national parks, just land. Just territory that's just sitting out there doing nothing. You know, they put a military base on it. They play with tanks, you know, but you can't do anything with it. And so I'm for beginning to sell off that land to people so they can develop it. That's the first point. And that's what these new guys that everyone's so suspicious of. I think one's in charge of the EPA, one's the Secretary of the Interior, all these different guys. That one of the things they're trying to do is to sell off some of this land that's not being utilized. But wait, there's more. I have never met a Democrat that did not have a religious faith in the EPA. You guys are fed a steady diet of propaganda about the EPA year after year. So you think it's just this beautiful organization that does nothing but give us pure air and pure water. And what has happened is this. The EPA is a bureaucracy that has its own laws. It's able to make its own laws, its own rules, and police itself. And like all such bureaucracies, the power has gotten out of control. They are going into companies.
So the cure is to appoint a guy who hates the EPA?
Yes, absolutely.
And who would, so you want to,
absolutely.
And you want to shut it down entirely?
Well, you don't know what it's been doing. There is a, for example, the EPA made up a new thing. I think it's called the Waters of America Act. And what it does is this. Anytime they find a pond a 10 by 10 foot pond on your land, they're able to come into your land and tell you exactly what you can do or not do on that land. They can shut your business down because it's a waterway. They say this pond is a waterway, and now you have to take orders from us on what you're going to do with your land. But more often than not, and I'll go on record as saying this, because more often than not, they're looking for bribes. There are a lot of lawsuits against the EPA because what's happening is this. These environmental agencies are going in and saying, you know, we found a little snail on your property, and we're not going to let you build that farm or mine that land or whatever because we found that snail. And it turns out that these bureaucrats are taking bribes to say, oh, turns out the snail's not such a big deal, don't worry. You can go ahead and build that. So what's really happening is the EPA has become completely corrupt. It's out of control. They're going by their own rules. They have no overseeing by the Congress or any governmental agency. And so Trump stepped in, knowing all this, and said, you know what? We need to put someone in charge of this agency and get it under control and reduce its power as much as possible, because more often than not, they're acting like the mafia than cleaning up and protecting the environment.
Okay, so let's take a break and Google EPA bribes.
All right.
All right, thank you.